dominant path, and I'm going to be honest, this has been so good. I kind of want to do it every year. Sarah just actually rolled her eyes in her head and said, "Oh my God, no." But this has been really great, and I'd like for this to be a regular thing, hopefully in the future, where Sarah does not have to manage it. So it's really been fun. If nothing else, it's a chance for us to get all together and see each other in this horrible time of disconnection. But what it has done is it's connected Ohio, the graphic design program at Ohio University. And actually, for me being a new person at OU, it has connected me more to the department because I don't know these people. And it's been wonderful to hear about their experiences. So this 5-part lecture series, it was sponsored by our School of Art and Design, but we're going to keep using these talks in our archive. So we will have access to these in the future so you can watch them. No need to get worried, Kendall. I know, like getting filmed. Oh my gosh. But but these will be great resources for the future. And so thank you for helping us establish a strong archive of alumni and speakers. So we are celebrating design in this spring, and this week we're announcing the recipient of the Honorable Karen Nolf Scholarship. And the Karen Nolf Scholarship for Excellence in Typography was established by the friends and family of Karen in respect for her dedication to typographic excellence. And this year, we're honored to present it to Peyton Hendricks, who is a junior, yes, and I will put an example of her amazing typeface design up in the chat in a moment, because it was stunning, and the fact that it came from a sophomore blew me away. I even sent pictures of it to my colleagues and said, I know y'all want to hire her when she's out. So Peyton, but even more so, what Peyton symbolizes, not just good work, but a wonderful, wonderful drive to learn. And that's truly what design is. And all the alumni have really been saying this. They don't necessarily know how to do what they do, but they like to learn it. And that's, Peyton's got that drive that gives me hope in the future. So rock on, Peyton. You will be getting $950 to go towards your school. Yes. So all those times I've seen you worn out because you had to work a late shift, hopefully you'll have a little bit of extra sleeping time for your senior year, which means no excuses. All right. So congratulations, and I will get that up in the chat shortly. We're also proud to announce the final amount of the College of Fine Arts Graphic Design Residency. We collected over $38,000. And this is woohoo! Yes, we rock. This is going to fund visiting typographers and letterpress printers and designers for the future. And this hopefully will build a new area of our program that will be an outreach, but also kind of still staying connected in the future. And then the really exciting thing that all the alumni are super excited about, I don't know if the students quite know how cool this is, but there is going to be an eBay auction of a poster collection. And this is Pat Enon's poster collection. This is kind of a big deal. So we're going to have posters from people like Herman Miller, and Brian's posters, I think, is one of them. And we've got Paula Scher and Wolfgang Weingart and April Greiman, all of whom were badasses from the past, and some of them are still here around too. So we'll have lots of news on that, and the bidding will be furious, I'm sure. I mean, in a good way, fast and furious, not furious. All right, so we will then conclude with, for this celebration of graphic design, with the ribbon cutting ceremony, virtually, of course, for the Don Atlanta Type Shop and Bindery. And this is a real wonderful chapter and a wonderful contribution that you've given. I mean, you've always been the letterpress printer, but now we have a place, what is it, quadruple the size, 10 times the size, and it's a beautiful, beautiful space. And we like it so much, we're redesigning the curriculum in order to include it. Yes. So the new curriculum will be, the graphic design will be primarily typography and letterpress, and we feel like this is a really important thing to have. Not many places have resources like this. So we still have graphic design, but we're just going to say letterpress and type are a little bit more important. And all right, so enough of our announcements. And I'd like to introduce Kendall. So Kendall is talking about the process is the craft and the craft is a process. She graduated with a BFA in graphic design in 2017. Oh, and she held a PACE position with Don, helping him with his books and his famous perpetual calendar. Since graduating, she has completed a fellowship at Berkeley Repertory Theatre and is currently the senior graphic designer for the Wexner Center of the Arts at Ohio State University. And this woman hires our graduates, as I know. So she's a wonderful resource for us. And thank you so much for taking time to speak to us. We're absolutely thrilled. So thank you, Kendall, and I will open it up to you.
Well, thank you all for being here and for suffering through yet another virtual meeting. I know we all have various levels of Zoom fatigue, but I'm really excited to be here and appreciate all of you being here. So I have a presentation prepared, and I do believe with Teams, I won't be able to see your faces while I give it unless there's something I haven't figured out. So if you want to ask a question, please speak up or put it in the chat and I'll get to it afterwards. So let's just start. Oh, please. Or don't share my screen correctly. That's fine. We'll do it this way.
There you go. You got it.
Well,
I think.
I feel like an old person. Where's my stupid? There it is. Okay. There we go.
I was going to say, welcome to the
Some
club.
of us old people are in the audience. Hang on.
Oh, gosh. So, again, thank you for coming to listen to me. So I'm going to talk about sort of my my journey through design. I've been introduced, but just so I could do it myself, my name's Kendall. I'm the senior graphic designer at the Wexner Center for the Arts at the Ohio State University, which is an incredibly long title, and I will call it the Wex from now on, so that you know what I'm talking about. And what I'm hoping to do here today is to talk about just my experience. I cannot tell you how to succeed, but I can tell you how I have reached my definition of success and just how I have gotten to where I'm at. And I will say, I distinctly remember being on the other side of this screen and not ever believing I would be the one talking to people and to students. That's very weird still. So we're going to start in spring 2017. This is my senior year at OU. And I have some examples of some of the work I was doing. I loved everything physical. That's why I really loved being a fine art major in particular. Etching and carving and mark making and hand drawing. If it took forever and required a lot of process to make a thing, I really loved it. I also really loved letterpress, and I'm very excited for the new letterpress shop you have. I want to visit. And here's some of my design work. A lot of what I was interested in, with art making kind of bled into a lot of my design work with texture. And, I love typography. And so here are some examples of what I was doing at the time. And this was a snapshot of my thesis show, which was all letterpress by hand and took forever. And is one of my favorite things I've ever done. But was really a mix of mediums and design and theory. And so that kind of takes me to, okay, I've done my thesis, and now what? And this is how I felt. And that is not because I didn't feel prepared. I was prepared from what I learned, from Dawn, from Sherry Blankenship, from Misty Thomas Trout, from all the printmaking teachers I had. I had really good skills and really good foundations, but I still felt this way. What is my purpose? What am I supposed to do? I felt I didn't know what to do. So I started doing the thing where you start looking for jobs and like, where do I apply and what does that look like? And then we had an opportunity come up. And we got an email from someone named Nora Marasicki, who worked at Berkeley Repertory Theatre and announced that they were having a fellowship, and we were encouraged to apply. And spoiler alert, Nora also went to OU, so the OU connection's really strong. So I applied and I got in. And that totally changed my life. And my first thought was like, oh, thank God I don't have to find a real job for a year. But then I was like, now I have to move across the country. I left a boyfriend. I left my family. I took a suitcase and then I arrived in Berkeley, California, and there I was. And suffice to say, it was incredible. And Nora, I think she's even on here. You were the best, and it was one of the best experience as a designer I could have had. But just some like logistics of what this was and like why I think the fellowship model is really interesting and really unique. And it wasn't something I was aware of when I was going through school until this came along. So it was about a year in length. We got like a $700 a month stipend to help pay for like food and transportation, and they paid for housing. We lived really close to the theater and were able to really immerse into the theater for an entire year. And I've just put for the job what I put on my resume for what we did. But basically, I worked under Nora, the art director, to do anything design related for the theater. And that included posters and programs and signage and so many different things. Basically, if it was a design material that the theater needed, we did it. And Berkeley Rep it's a regional theater. They do incredible work. And it was really eye-opening to kind of work somewhere in-house and see what that is like. The pace that's required, and also like I think with nonprofit and also working in the arts, like the sort of jack of all trades you need to be. It's something I really, really loved. Like learning how to do video and photo shoots and taking the skills that I learned and having those really good design foundations, and then taking it and then, doing more things and learning more things and, working within in that environment in a marketing department and with someone who was a fantastic mentor. It was really eye-opening. So I have some brief examples of some of the work I was doing. So on the left, this is an example of sort of like a show identity. Berkeley Rep has like a teen theater group that they support, and at the end of their like year, they do like a one acts. And so I kind of did the identity and look for that. And on the right are spread examples from the Berkeley Rep magazine, because instead of like what you might think of as a traditional program from a theater, they do a magazine and there's articles and like interesting things to read while you're sitting there waiting for the show. So I got a lot of real hands-on typographic experience in doing those magazines. It also extended into like higher end projects, like, experimenting with a foil and a spot gloss and things like that for something like an invitation. So it was really like, it spanned the gamut of all kinds of design and was a fantastic taste of what that was like. So that brings us to a year later, and I'm now back to what do I do with my life now? Because that feeling didn't go away. Like for a year I had it figured out. I loved it. I did not like California, and I knew I wanted to come back to Ohio. I was heartbroken to leave the people and all the friends I made there, but I knew I wanted to come back. And I was like, well, how on earth? What am I going to do? The nonprofit arts seemed to be the right thing for me at the time. I really liked working in it. So this is where like the dreaded networking word comes into play, and like you get told it all the time in school, and you're like, yeah, whatever. I'm an introvert and really struggle with things like this, but here's where it comes into play. As I mentioned, Nora was an OU alum as well. And what was great about the fellowship at Berkeley Rep was then you have all of these past graphic design fellows who like when you email them, they're like, oh my God, hello, we're friends now. It's fantastic. And so, Nora helped connect me with past fellows and, because they're all working and doing their lives. And one of the people I called and talked to, his name was Brandon Balog, and he worked for the Wex, and we had this great conversation about design and the things I liked to do, and the Berkeley Rep connection and his time in California. And I was like, well, that's lovely. I have a new friend. And at the end of the conversation, he's like, and also we're looking for a graphic designer. And I was like, okay, all right. So I applied. What I find really funny now is I was really worried because I was in California at the time and did like a Skype interview, which is funny because now everything is over Skype or Zoom or whatever. But I applied and very happily I got the job. So I was signed on as the graphic designer in August of 2018. And I worked under Brandon Balog, who was the senior graphic designer at the time. And we also had a creative director named Erica Anderson. So I was like, this is awesome. I am like, back where I wanted to be. I'm back in Ohio with my family and boyfriend, whatever. And now I get to work at another nonprofit art center and work under these incredible designers. Because what's really interesting about the Wex is just how important design is to the institution. The institution's been around for 30 years, and every single year the design is so strong. They've always had a team of designers. And I was so excited to learn and to make work. And just to explain a little more about the Wex, it has all areas of art: film, video, exhibitions, performing arts, education programs. There's a store. If it is contemporary art or art related, we do it. And this is definitely different from Berkeley Rep, where it was solely a theater. This is sort of all the arts. And it's definitely a challenge to work in it, and I'll kind of get to that. But so here's some examples of some of the work I was doing when I first started. This is an example of we threw a part, like a fundraiser party where we did at the time, and the kind of look of it was based off of the work in the galleries, which at the time was John Waters, who, if you haven't looked at his exhibition art, it's fantastic and hilarious and totally out there. So I was covering rats in glitter and taking photography, and I was like, oh my God, this is my job. This is really fun. I was also doing things like store photography and product photography and assets for social. And, I jumped really headfirst into literally all the different things we do. And one of those being, the Pages book, which is based on an education program we do where high school students are bused in and they experience arts at the Wex. And then we take their experience and the work that they submit and we turn it into a physical book. It is a physical, perfect bound book. And it's a really, really unique project, but I had never designed a book before, and here we are, I'm designing a book, and it's for this incredibly altruistic program, which is just insane. It was insane to me. It still is insane to me that the Wex supports this work. I was also doing work for exhibitions, which for something that we curate looks something like this, where we come up with an identity that can follow the show through all its materials. So environmental graphics and print graphics and billboards, and the list is really long. This is just an example of a gallery guide. And this show, with work with Ann Hamilton, Jenny Holzer, and Maya Lin, all of the work in the show was really about time. And so that's where that identity comes into play, with the repetition of the typography. And a lot of Jenny Holzer's work it deals with tickers, like billboard tickers. And so I was inspired by that. And so this is how that turned out in the gallery guide and what that kind of looked like. And this is what it looked like in the galleries, where we have a main title wall. It's all in vinyl, and we have an introductory wall, as well as smaller names in vinyl. But again, the branding's really strong. And what's interesting is a lot of the things we do, a lot of the shows we do, it's all unique. It's all within the Wex brand, but what's really cool about design here is that we can really mold the design to what the show or whatever we're putting on is. We're not limited by always using our brand color or our brand typeface. So as a designer, it's equally freeing and terrifying, where you're like, you literally have a blank canvas and your parameters are quite small. So it's really exciting. So this is some of my early work. And at this point, I will say, going back to sort of the team structure, pretty soon after I started, a few months later, the creative director announced she was leaving. And then about a year after that, the senior graphic designer left. And, you know, this totally shook my world. But they asked me if I wanted to step up. And I was like, well, yeah, I'll do that. And my world it changed again in a very short amount of time. I've only worked here for a couple of years now. So this is a very long slide, which you don't have to read all of, but it's mostly so I can remember all the things I am responsible for. But basically, my role is the brand steward, you know, and keeping track of all print materials, all digital materials, anything that we put out, making sure that it fits with the Wex brand and, you know, has the right aesthetic voice. And this is everything from books to catalogs and gallery guides and ads and posters and flyers and emails, and the list is really long. I also oversee the graphic designer position and typically 2 intern positions too. So I do some project management for that and some mentorship on that end of things. And to work really closely with the rest of marketing, you know, editors who are incredible people, a web developer, you know, trying to fix our website and make updates, and a social media manager, and, you know, really working really collaboratively within that team to, you know, produce what we do. So this last part of my presentation is sort of the lessons I keep learning, and some examples of how that's played out in my relatively short career. And the first one is just craft is key. And I remember learning this in Sherry Blankenship's, I think it was a description. It was a foundation course, and we were like cutting things out of paper, and the craft was so important and how clean it was, and that stuck with me. And a lot of the professors I had really reinforced that, but I didn't realize what that looked like sort of for design. And so this is a really overwhelming slide, but this is some of the smaller pieces we do, quote unquote, postcards and ads and, you know, quick things. However, it is so important that every single thing is well considered, typographically, aesthetically, image-wise. The craft being really, really like high quality is important for everything. And that is one of my goals as a manager now. You know, everything we do, like, we have incredible skills, and I want us to be able to make, you know, really high craft pieces for the center. And that's one of the reasons that like, oh, sorry, did someone say something?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wondered, out of these, this spread you're showing us here, do you have a favorite and a more fun follow-up? Do you have a least favorite out of these?
Oh, that's really fun. I like anything with performing arts because the images are beautiful. So the bottom left piece that says jumping into performing arts at the Wex is just really guiltily fun to work on, because like the images you get are just incredible, because also the Wex works with like incredible artists. So that's really fun. My least favorite, I really don't like ads because of all of the credit requirements and sponsor requirements, which are super important, and I get their purpose. But as a designer, you're like, this is taking up valuable real estate for the design and the communication to the audience. So that grinds my gears. So like having lots of like company logos and stuff. So there's my favorite and least favorite of these things. But they're all done well, and that's really important. That's what I'm trying to talk about, is just Every single piece you can put in front and be like, yep, I'm proud I did that, because the typography is on point. Like, there's nothing out of place. And for that purpose, it was done as well as I could. The next kind of lesson I have is learning your process. And this is something that took me a while. And I don't think I really took the time in school to understand what my process was. I work with designers who amazingly will, like, they'll get a project and they'll like sit there and they'll think about it. And then they do it and it's really good. And I'm like, what the hell? I can't do that. That's not my process. And I was like, what's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with me. I just work differently. And so I'm going to kind of take you through what some of my process looks like. So this is some of the branding work I did for the exhibition that's actually currently up at the Wex. It's called Climate Changing on Artists, Institutions, and the Social Environment. And these are bad. I'm very aware of this. But what you're seeing is sort of inspiration culling. And then I typically start with typography and just looking at a bunch of different things. I am such a visual person. I have to see it. I have to try all the bad ideas. I have to see how bad they are, because I think you end up finding those happy accidents and those things that you didn't think would work. And then you're like, but what if I have this and this? And then there's your branding. Like, there's the answer. So this is what my process looks like. This is a very small sliver. This document that I pulled this from is like maybe 70 pages long. It's a lot. But this is how I work. And now that I know this very, very well, I can approach every single project just knowing, like, all right, like, time to do that 70-page document every single time. And that's fine, because I will get to the final solution. And to show you, this is what the final solution was. I worked really closely with the curator to develop this. She wanted something that was kind of alarming looking, hence the kind of abrasive color palette. And this like graphic treatment came from a work that's on the building right now called Wexner Castle. That's by Chris Burden. And he put like crenellations on top of the Wex building to kind of ask, is a museum, is it a castle to keep things in or to keep things out? Like, what is the role of an institution? And so from that graphic device, it became a door. It can kind of mold into whatever space it needs, because this exhibition has so many complicated themes that it needed to be flexible like that. So that's how that worked out. Another thing is to really trust your foundations. And I recently got to experience this really firsthand, because one of the long-standing Wex print pieces is a bi-monthly calendar. I don't have this exact issue, but I have another issue here. It's quite large. And, as a designer, it was really fun to do because it was basically a big design puzzle. There was a format for it, but it was different every time. But there were talks about, this was like 2019. We were like, it's really long. Like, it's kind of hard to read. Like, what are we going to do? How do we change it? And then, for a while, it was just me as a designer on staff with one intern. And then COVID happened and we didn't have events. This piece is event driven. And we were like, what are we going to do? So we capitalized on it and redesigned this piece. And this is where it was very, very nerve-wracking being the only designer. And, this piece has been around for 30 years. It's won awards all along the way. And here I am taking tradition and just like totally flipping it. And that was a really big thing on my shoulders. But trust your design foundations. I went back to my process. I went back to, analyzing this piece and figuring out what made it unique. The square, I still kept the square, but I chopped the thing in half. So it was not nearly as unwieldy to read. And the focus is now instead on providing a really clear window for people to read these stories. It's all story-based. It's all about the process at the Wex, because that's our thing. Like a lot of what we do is we're supporting artists who are making work, and it's not done yet, but that's what we do. So this piece is made to reflect that and to really put a highlight on those stories. And I think the design helps do that. But getting there was an extremely fraught process. It was a lot of late nights, a lot of nerve-wracking nights. This man, Robert Bringhurst, you should buy this book. He was my company during this time, and a lot of imaginary arguments with this author. And also just had to trust myself and also, figure out what best served the institution. And I have one final lesson, and that being a designer looks like a lot of different things. And I put this in here because I'm very hard on myself. And I always thought, I was like, I'm not in New York. I'm not in San Francisco. I don't make a ton of money. I don't look like a designer, whatever. So, I'm not good enough, but that's not true. Design looks like so many different things. And that's one of the reasons it's wonderful. But I wish I had not gotten as hung up on that when I was, in school or figuring out what I wanted to be. It really takes embracing who you are and what you are good at and what you like to do. And I think if you follow that pretty doggedly, you will end up where you need to be. And I also just, this is the end of my presentation, but I do just want to acknowledge that putting this presentation together and like me sitting here and talking to you, really, it makes my life seem so linear and nice and neat and all wrapped up. But the reality doesn't feel like that way. It's nerve-wracking. I still have trouble. I still question myself. I still doubt things. I don't know what I'm going to do next with my life. There's so many things that I can't put in this presentation. But I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm not some perfect thing who has figured out everything, even though this presentation is like, oh yeah, I did A and then B and then C, and it's all true. But the reality is just, it's hard. And there's a lot. It's not included in this, but so that is my presentation.
I love your honesty, Kendall. This is wonderful. It's really great to see, because I think a lot of times it's very easy for a student to go, I will never be like that. I can never be like that. And for you to really talk about, just because you have a great job doesn't mean you always know what you're doing. And actually, I have to tell you, I used to live in Berkeley, and I took pictures of the work at the Repertory Theatre because it was right by my house and I was always walking by it. And so I have collections of your work before I even met you. So even I, as a graphic designer and typographer, was very impressed with what was coming out of there. So that's a bit of a connection. So, all right. Thank you so much. She's brought up a couple questions about like pathways, but also what's the purpose of a lot of these things. And I loved how you talked about, yeah, we had this thing, it was kind of unwieldy, we didn't know what to do. And I think that comes up a lot in design, and for you to talk about your process is really, really helpful. Okay, Texas, you get first shot. What question do y'all have?
I do have a question. So when you're working on your mailers and your catalogs, have you ever had a moment where your idea for branding was clashed with the exhibition, the artist? And if so, how did you deal with that?
It doesn't. In the time that I have been here, every time I've done it, I've worked really closely with a curator, and they're really responsible for channeling the artist's voice and their intention. It's also a very interesting balance of sort of like, if we curate the show, it is our responsibility to build that identity for our space, which is really funky looking, and for the show in particular. So I've never had an artist like balk at something. And another thing that really helps with that is when I work with curators, they see these in multiple stages. So there is round one. There is like, here are your 4 main concepts. What do you like? What do you want me to explore further? And it also helps when, this is another thing I forgot to mention, being able to explain your design is so important. And I did not realize that in school. I was like, I'm a designer. I don't need to know words. Yeah, you do. You need to know how to write. You need to know how to write an email. You need to know how to explain yourself. And that's hard. And so every single time I do something like an identity, there is a system. And so, well, why is that? And then I'm like, it's that way because of A, B, C. And so that way they may push back, but there's a reason for it and there's a reason for the design. So I think the reason I haven't ever gone so far and then been like, we've had to change something majorly. I think it's because we've stepped through the process and people are aware of where it's going. And then we have the go ahead to complete it. Does that answer your question fully?
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, next. Texas, do you have any more questions? No?
Oh, yes. Alex has a question. Whenever it comes to creativity and you feel like there's moments where you just lose it, what is your process on like slowly gaining that back?
It's an interesting question and one that has really come up this year with the pandemic. I think being alone, like in your apartment or your house and not seeing people face to face makes it really, really hard. If I ever get stuck, I talk to someone. And that's typically Nasiki, who's my graphic designer. You are the best partner to work with I could ever ask for. I think designers, I always had this stereotype that we're like these cool lone wolf people who just like go off and do one thing and then it's like, it's done, it's amazing, like no one helped me. I think that's totally bullshit, because every time I've gotten hung up, I talk through it with someone. It doesn't even need to be like a designer. It's just like, I've done it to my mom, like, Mom, let me talk to you about this design. And then by the end, I'm like, okay, all right, cool. Like, I know where I'm hung up, but I know where I need to go. So, it's totally normal to lose creative steam, but I think talking it through with people is what's really helpful. It's another reason I love working with editors. They're such smart people and they're so articulate that every time I talk to them, I'm like, oh yeah, you're totally right. Like I need to go in that direction. That's where like the marriage of like your skills with someone else's skills can really come into play. So that's what I have to say, like talk to people. I'll also say that I always thought that I had to do design 24/7 to be a successful designer, in my off time and make all these things, but that's not what I do. I work really hard at work and all of my creative energy goes there. And after work, I bake, I cook, I sew, I paint minis. I do not do design work in a typical way. And that helps too, to really balance out the design fatigue. So don't be hard on yourself if you're like that. If you're like me, like you can totally make it work.
Beyond design fatigue and a remedy for that, do you find that these activities you've mentioned also benefit your design choices when you are at work and you're pushing your stuff, right?
They totally do.
Yeah.
They totally do. And also because one thing so the design community is really great. And like looking at design inspiration is awesome. But here's the big bone I have to pick with a lot of design, like flashy design. It's not readable or it's not functional. And that is something that I wish. So that's why like looking at other things and experimenting in other areas really can help inform that. Like, like I'm cooking this recipe and this recipe is so poorly designed. Like what the hell? How can I fix it? It brings in like other thoughts that you would not consider. And I think thinking only in like the design realm can actually be really dangerous. Like, I mean, I like them too. I like too small typography and really flashy type. Like who doesn't? Like it's sexy. Come on. We're designers. That's what we do. But I think, I have to remedy that with the reality of like the work that we are doing is for the public. It's for the public in Columbus, Ohio, and it's contemporary art. And contemporary art is hard. So how do I and our team make work that can talk to people, that can reach people in a way that is meaningful and impactful. And so I think some of the overly designed things can turn people off. So, yeah.
Kendall, what about, you talked about teams a couple times. How many people are on a typical team, like for an exhibit or for a brochure? What are the team members like?
So we work in marketing. So typically it's on any project, it's me and the Siki, graphic designer, and an intern. We have 2 editors that we work with and a marketing director. And with exhibitions, like it might just be like, it's usually one curator. And then normally the director of the institution, her name's Johanna Burton, she'll sit in too, because those are very institutionally important. So they're actually really small teams. What we managed to pull off with the amount of people we have, I think, is really incredible. So it's working really, really closely, especially like with our editor, just every single project back and forth, and approving things through like stakeholders and things like that. So it's quite small where we are.
Do y'all do like focus groups to where you just expose like proto designs to just general public and see how they respond to it, or is that not in the loop of how a flyer or a poster is made?
I wish we could do that. That sounds awesome. I think we've done some like user experience surveys in the past. That's mostly for the website and stuff. But no, I wish we could. Oftentimes we are moving at such a pace that it doesn't allow for it, which is one of the really hard things. But I wish we could. That sounds awesome.
All right. Anyone else? More? We've got plenty of time. Texas?
Kendall, I had written down here this, when you showed your thesis, you said that you printed things in letterpress, but you didn't indicate that it was what you gave away in your thesis. You gave everybody the chance to take pages of your letterpress with them, which is just, there's a selflessness about it, and just a real work ethic and an honesty, like Shelley was mentioning. But that was a lot of work. A lot of work.
It was. I still, when I think about just the hours and hours and hours in the type shop, I loved it. But just for some more explanation, what I letterpressed was text between my mother and I, because I realized I was a bit of a hoarder in that regard. But it cataloged like my relationship with her throughout the years I was in college. But also, like, there's this weird thing of texts are very transient and they just go away. But like when you print something like with a letterpress, they take on different meaning. And so it was really about like what does that transformation of material do to something, which is so interesting. And another thing about like why print's never going to die, and it has its place, which is why like when we redid the calendar, I was like, this has to do what only print can do. Like, yes, we will put it up online in a PDF so people can see it. Like, it's on my list to maybe redo it, like an online only experience for it, but it's meant to be a print piece and do what a print piece can do, which is really tell a story and get you involved and get you really focused on something in particular. So
what's your stance as a maker? Because he talked about selflessness. I'm curious. Growing up, I would love to, if I saw a cool poster, I would feel inclined to steal it, right? Do you treat that as like high praise, or do you scoff at people like
oh no,
taking away?
Totally take it. I'm also a poster stealer. I have been in the past. But that's why like at the Wex, like we do gallery guides, and I mean, like this was, I think it was like $8,000. Like we put a lot of money into this and we give them away for free. Like that's awesome. Like, I want you to take the thing. I want you to steal the thing. Like, I think whatever you get out of it, like, yes, totally.
I wanted to share one little story when we did our alumni exhibition in the Trisellini, when the president of Ohio University came by and I told him that you were working at the Wex and that this was a piece that you had produced, and he rushed over to his photographer. He said, come over here, take a picture of this. This is a recruitment tool right here.
Well, I'm glad.
Oh, it was great. It was great.
Other questions? You can raise your hand virtually, or you can just start speaking. Oh, Texas. All right. Oh, a person with a hat. There we go.
Okay. I have half of this question written out. So when it comes to the steady progression of larger companies embracing a more overly simplistic design strategy, how do you personally like this type of strategy that, say, Google uses or Firefox? And do you think that this is something that the public, who are not designers, prefer to use?
I think it's dumb. You're getting unfiltered opinion here. It's definitely a bandwagon thing. What Google did with their stupid icons that all look the same, what the heck? Yeah, no, I ain't about it. No, it's a problem, and something that I'm very aware of with the Wex too, because we're a contemporary art museum and we feel a little cold. And one of the things on my very long to-do list is how can we put a spin on that? How can we change our brand so that we're much more human? No, I think it's dumb. And every time I see it, I hate it. Sometimes it's the right choice. Like for the first company or two that did it, it was probably the right choice for them. But we're going to see a total blowback from that. And I can't wait for that. I want to see things with texture and life and just a heart. I look forward to that. I think it'll come.
I think part of that is because Silicon Valley does not have great design. It's a corporate approach. And so a lot of the way that they're approaching these things is what could we be perceived as, and it's really conservative. You don't see that much exciting or different kind of things in San Francisco. You do in LA, or you would in Seattle a little bit, but San Francisco's not that way, although Berkeley is.
Yeah, I have to say that, I mean, I've only worked for nonprofit art institutions, so like my view is very different. If I worked for Microsoft or Google or whatever, I'd probably have a very different answer for you and a reason about why we do it that way and why it's the best way. But again, nonprofit arts, we kind of do whatever we want and really embrace that. So,
all right, more.
Is Berkeley still doing the internship, or do you know?
I don't know. I mean, I know that they've been really affected by COVID, and so, which is heartbreaking. All our institutions have been affected, but there's definitely other programs like that out there, and I don't know what they are, but it's incredibly unique and a really awesome learning opportunity, which is why I love having interns, because I can give back to, in some way, like pay homage to Nora and to all the people who taught me. I can share some of that knowledge and help bring another designer into the world, and that's probably one of the most satisfying parts of my job.
Aw, wow, I'm gonna wipe the tears away. It's so wonderful to hear vindication of these things that you're saying, like craft matters, and you know, it's wonderful to hear you talk about, I guess, opinions without trying to be too, I don't know, official. Because I think that this is a big part of what design is you have to have opinions. That's part of what you do. And so it's great to hear it from the art side of it, and to know that good design isn't just Silicon Valley. So, yeah. All right.
Totally.
More? Texas, do you have any more? Oh, they're quiet. Okay, Don, did you have something?
No, I just want to thank Kendall. It's wonderful. I really appreciate it.
Oh, Kendall, this has been really great, really, really great. And I'm really happy that you're passing it on to other designers too. And it is the best part. So, okay, well, if we don't have any other questions, we can wrap this up. And I really, really appreciate it. And for you to be just next door is just great. And I love that Ohio University graduates go work at The Ohio State. I think that's pretty cool.
There's a whole pocket of us. My boss is an OU alum as well. Believe me, we're all
It's
here.
great.
Are you
I have
still
actually
in
been.
contact with Brandon?
I have been. I think he's moved on somewhere else, but I think he's doing okay, and I do miss him. But
tricks and inline skating and everything.
yes, he is much better at sports things than I am. Sure. Those are not my hobbies.
Yeah. Yeah, great.
Okay, then thank you so much, Kendall. And and I had said that I was going to post some work of Peyton's up. For some reason, I'm not able to put it in the chat, and I don't know why. I think that Teams is just mean sometimes. So we will promote that more later on. So congratulations again to Peyton for getting the Karen Nolf Scholarship. And thank you all for coming and being a part of our wonderful series of alumni speakers. And keep your eyes out for the eBay auction and for the ribbon cutting of the new letterpress shop. So, all right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Kendall, please come.